Hi, welcome to the program. I'm Jim LaPierre, and I am a wounded healer. I met with an awful lot of healers and helpers of different types as I was developing this program, and I was surprised how many of them said the same thing. You can't call it burnout. Nobody wants to identify as burned out. And I know that that's true. Nobody wants to experience it, much less profess publicly that that's where they're at. But I've been there many times. I went into this profession 10 feet tall and bulletproof. I went into it without even an awareness of what my limitations were, much less having a healthy respect for them. So, what I know in retrospect is there are a lot of factors that put me at risk for burnout. I know that I worked in very toxic environments, and I think that the discussion of moral injury that's starting to unfold is a really important part of the context in which burnout occurs. I know that compassion fatigue and vicarious and secondary trauma certainly uh, leave a great deal of disposition towards burnout, and I know that there needs to be a more meaningful conversation about how we avoid burnout and how we come back from it when we experience it. My interest was renewed this past year. The World Health Organization declared burnout occupationally to be a medical condition. And I'm still waiting to see what they prescribe as a course of treatment, but my fear is that it's going to be every bit as cliched as the things that we tell people to do to avoid burnout. Those are really a matter of common sense. We all know that we're supposed to eat good food and drink lots of water and exercise and have hobbies and interests, but then, despite having that knowledge, we typically don't. I work in mental health and addictions, and I think the persona that my field portrays is that we're just wonderfully altruistic people who are in our chosen professions because we want to help people. Well, that is not my motive. I got into the field of mental health because I struggled with mental illness. I started working in trauma recovery and addiction recovery because those are people that I identify with. Those are people like me. I went into this field without a lot of self awareness, which meant that I didn't have a strong sense of what my limitations were. They were just constantly being pushed. I went into the field with a basic awareness of what compassion fatigue and vicarious and secondary trauma were, but I didn't really see myself as susceptible to those. And in retrospect, I can see that the very foundation of my life, the adverse childhood experiences and ways in which I have experienced trauma in my life, left me all the more predisposed to burnout. So, my hope is that we can expand this conversation in meaningful ways because the work that I do is not really a hard science. It's more spiritual, it's more artistic in nature, and it's based in the need for connection. When I struggled most in my profession, I struggled alone. I struggled without connection to other talented healers and helpers. And in retrospect, that was the greatest piece of my downfall. I need to be able to connect to people who are very much like me, who understand the difficulties of working in our fields, who have some real life experience in wrestling with some of the occupational stress and just some of the taxing and draining nature of the work that we do. So, we're going to start out that conversation by exploring moral injury, compassion fatigue, vicarious and secondary trauma, and we're going to look at how we realistically cope with each of those, how we create safer environments for ourselves and for the people that we work with. And we're going to, well, I call it using the golden rule in reverse. We're going to explore the contrast between how we are with our clients, with our patients, and how we are with ourselves. Because my experience is those of us who have great empathy for others often lack compassion for ourselves. So I'm looking forward to exploring all of those things with you. please, by all means, email me, contact me. I want to hear your questions. I want to hear what your experience has been like. And I want to keep broadening this conversation so that more of us are connected and therefore not struggling and ideally transforming. Thanks.